Dear friends, we are one, and we come today as one human family, sharing one planet, intent on building together a common future based on shared hope, mutual interests, consciously working together to find common solutions. Our interconnectedness has long been recognized in spiritual traditions and practices around the world, and in the philosophy, the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Desmond Tutu explained that it is the expression that my humanity is bound up in yours. I am because you are, I am because we are. This interconnectedness compels us, as it did generations before us, to find the moral courage and take the decisive steps to end the horrors faced by humanity and to create new structures and new opportunity. Generations before us ended wars. They canceled debt. They dismantled slavery. They ended apartheid. They acted to stop genocide. They declared all people equal, and they gave women the vote, and they ended colonialism, and they built new nation states. They generated prosperity from deep poverty. I ask you today, will we summon the global moral strategic leadership necessary? I want to congratulate the Secretary General and his deputy and the team of ambassadors from Namibia and Germany who have led us safely to this pact over the course of the last 2 years of negotiations. My friends, we will not succeed in overcoming our existential challenges if we are not prepared to change the global governance structures that are rooted in the outcome of World War II and have become unsuited to today's world. The distrust in our institutions of governance, the mistrust between the governors and the governed, will continue to foster social alienation the world over at the very time that we need to find as many people as possible to shape a new world. Not governance, but people. This approach to governance reinforces the notion that it is acceptable to have first-class and second-class citizens, a notion that we all find, I hope, repugnant. The tentacles of power today remain almost as it was a century ago. If, my friends, we do not create the space and the new voices are not heard, we will not secure the transformation needed to save people and to save planet. What the world needs now is a reset. What the world needs now is a little more love. A reset to embrace our common future. A reset that allows us to work together to navigate spaces together. We've seen the floods and the hurricanes, the droughts, the wildfires. They've affected us all. The failure to share the world's resources, which are more than adequate for everyone, will continue to drive us to war and to social disintegration and to migration. The absence of access to digital technologies and even basic electricity in Africa will condemn us to living in two separate worlds and may even, with AI, if unregulated, threaten completely the existence of human civilization as we know it. We know what the world needs, as I said. And what our people want to hear from us today is that we can overcome these challenges by working together, and that the visible actions that are necessary are being agreed today and tomorrow to secure the future in this pact. But our people know instinctively that this will only be talk unless there's a fundamental change in what we do and how we do it, in who is seen and heard in the corridors of decision making. And that is why we continue to propel the Bridgetown Initiative as a serious reform for changing the rules of the game, shock-proofing vulnerable economies, and indeed securing sufficient to have the SDGs and of course the climate crisis be confronted. Now is the time for us to choose hope and love over hate and division. We can change this global governance system. We can change the structure and focus of the international financial system. We can make both fit for purpose for the majority of world's people, not just a few. It doesn't require new technologies. It requires action and humanity. Accepting that we are human together, that we are because of each other, and that we can, in this generation, secure the future of human progress. And I truly believe that we can, because we, the peoples of the world, have no other choice and no other planet on which to live.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel once again. My name is Dash Lifestyle. Kindly for watching me for the first time, remember to subscribe, like, share, and also comment. So guys, I want us to continue watching and listening to this warning message from the Prime Minister of Barbados, Motley. Motley, she is sending a warning message to the United States to leave the black Americans and the black people in the Caribbean and Africa alone. And also, we are going to see the message that Ibrahim Traore, he is sending to the black Americans and to all black people who they are in the diaspora. So kindly guys, watch this video till the end, then I'll be back with more comment.
In the room, what a lot of Western climate diplomats tell me is that leaders like yourself also carry a responsibility. Why are vulnerable countries still so debt-stricken? Why is there still corruption? What is your response to that?
You really want me to answer you?
I do.
Okay. Why is it that every time we talk about countries from the South, the first allegation is corruption? Last time I checked, in the USA and the UK and Europe, they're riddled with corruption, but nobody says that they're not capable of achieving their objectives because of corruption. Why is it that we're not talking about the fact that these countries became independent, having allowed those countries that colonized them to extract significant portions of their wealth, such that we had no proper housing, no proper education, no proper healthcare systems, no proper legal systems, no proper across the whole stream, and certainly nothing to do with building social capital like community development and cultural enterprises. And what has happened is therefore that we have spent the time since independence trying to give our people what the global north has taken for granted and has supported by the extrication of centuries of wealth to give their people out of our blood, sweat, and tears. Now, when our blood, sweat, and tears finances the Industrial Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution then causes the climate crisis, and then I have to pay for the consequences of the climate crisis because of the Industrial Revolution financed by our blood, sweat, and tears, then I think they have no moral authority to tell me anything about the financing of the climate or about why we don't have enough.
Is it anger over this that fuels your energy?
Anger? Absolutely not. Unfairness, lack of justice. They're not angry. I'm just disappointed that humankind still wants to believe that there's one world for a set of people and another world for another set. When you ask us to deal with financing of net zero, people forget that we're already highly indebted countries, most island states. Why? Because we've been carrying the cost of climate for a while now. And we're carrying the cost of the G7, formerly G8 countries, industrialization on our balance sheets. And it's wrong. And nobody's making the room to ensure that we get access to grants. We can't borrow if we have no fiscal space easily. And the cost of borrowing is also prohibitive. So that what we've said, look, we need international solutions to international problems. We need an international balance sheet that takes away this debt, because when we do it, we crowd out our development and the SDGs being part of our national program. And that is our present. That's not our future. So that if we can resolve these issues in an equitable way, let's take private law. If you lived next to me and you dumped on my property, I would have a legitimate claim against you for nuisance or for tortious interference. Internationally, we have nothing to rely on other than morality. And that's why I say that the world needs global, moral, strategic leadership. And that's why I say that ordinary citizens ought now to demand, because while we in the islands are the canaries, you are soon going to be the victims of that. Which country is hit by a hurricane every year? Do you know? The United States of America. Every year. It's just different states. Barbados is that country where modern racism in the Americas started, when the British literally settled in the 17th century. In 1661, the parliament which I lead passed the heinous slave code that spawned other slave codes here in the US, either directly mimicked or in part indirectly. And we feel that we have a moral obligation to be able to start to deconstruct the racism in all of its forms doesn't only come in laws that are still there, but it also comes in ways in which people undermine democracy, in ways in which people prevent people from voting, in ways in which people make judgments about people because of color or race. And we've got to work hard to deconstruct it. And we have to also recognize that when many countries became independent, there was no development compact or development package left for us to finance education, healthcare, or any of these issues. But when the slaves were emancipated, 20 million pounds was paid to the slave owners, and then by reason of a 4-year apprenticeship scheme, another 27 million pounds of free labor was given. Now, if we were to take the example of Haiti, which is perhaps the most egregious example there is, where the French government took back from Haiti, and I think New York Times did an article recently.
Very powerful, yes.
That's right. So you know that even though Haiti declared independence, they then had to pay the French government for a significant period of time a portion of their customs duties. And yet Haiti today has never recovered. And we have to ask ourselves, can we accept that the Industrial Revolution was financed by the blood, sweat, and tears and money of developing countries, and at the same time causes the climate crisis today? And it's a case of double jeopardy. So we had the wealth taken from us, and now we are facing the consequences of that wealth's impact on the Earth's climate. It's wrong, just simply wrong. You cannot appreciate what we're going through if you don't have knowledge or people at the table for consultation. And very often people will make decisions, for example, that may affect small island developing states who constitute a quarter of the world's states without actually knowing the implications. Now, if you have someone at the table, what might be even an innocent decision, but loaded with awful consequences, you can stop ahead of the time, and you need to do it. Why? Because most small states don't have a buffer for error, don't have a buffer for benign neglect. And therefore, changing the rules of the game to allow us to be seen and heard is absolutely critical, particularly given the multiplicity of challenges that we are facing. Most of these countries started without a development compact. They started having been the victims of the extraction of wealth for centuries. It therefore meant that you had undeveloped systems of education, undeveloped systems of healthcare, no housing, very limited capacity in terms of the treasury. And then you all of a sudden ask them to adjust to these multiplicity of global challenges, very little of which they've contributed to, and then say, go and incur more debt. And then when you do it, then you realize that I'm crowding out this fiscal space that I have for education, for healthcare. So we are being, as I've said over and over, victims twice, both in terms of the extraction of wealth for the Industrial Revolution, and then the double jeopardy comes because that same Industrial Revolution has put us on the front line of the climate crisis. Now, when you add to that the fact that the colonial structures and relationships of power were cemented in the context of the international institutions, be it the UN or the IFIs, that's the triple exposure to jeopardy, because it then means that you don't have the capacity to change the trajectory or to change the attitude of these institutions. How is it that quantitative easing is not recommended for countries across the world prior to COVID? But as soon as COVID comes, the G7 countries engage in the most massive exercise in quantitative easing known. How is it that we continue, and President Lula spoke about it yesterday in his address to the General Assembly, I've spoken about it over and over, that Ghana and other countries in Africa are borrowing at multiple rates of what European countries can borrow at, in circumstances where the needs are greater and in circumstances where there is no clear explanation. You can tell me about safe assets and you can give me all the technical language. But when all is said and done, there is a fundamental disparity How is it that carbon market prices in Guyana are at $6 and $8 a ton, but in Europe in excess of $100 a ton? There is need for a fundamental reset first in terms of the need for equity and the removal of disparity of treatment. Then there is need to come now to the mechanics of how, that's why I asked you how frank do you want me to be.
Frank.
Then there is need to come now to the mechanics of what we must do, because we find ourselves in the world that we have, not the one that we want. So we have seen some improvements, and let us be fair, but the problem is that we're not seeing the speed and the scope of what we need to do. And if you ask me to be diverted, as my own country is, we got hit by Hurricane Beryl. We didn't get the humanitarian disaster that the Grenadines had, or that Carriacou had, but my fishing industry was decimated, 90% of it. All of my beaches on the West Coast affected. All of my jetties and my fishing harbor completely affected. So I know how to find money to divert, to fix a harbor, a fishing harbor, and I still have to, because of the circumstances of that harbor, it remains vulnerable, so I've got to build a new one as well. But I can't just go straight to the new one, because the new one needs 18 months of studies before I can do anything. So I've got to repair immediately and plan for building. But that money would have been otherwise spent with the fiscal space that I need to have in areas of healthcare, or in fighting crime, or in building education. Yeah. So I give you that example where harsh choices have to be made, and where very often the best made plans are put aside, not because of anything we have done, but because within 72 hours you're told, get yourself ready. God knows what's going to happen in Cuba and Florida with Helen as we speak. And what we're missing is that's just the heart attacks. Let's deal with the chronic NCDs of climate. That's water, drought. That is wildfires. The other things that are literally decimating the capacity of communities to live. And the big one, and you and I have talked about this in DC, is the role that the absence of insurance, affordable insurance, will play in completely changing the deal, because the whole financial system is premised on, if I want a mortgage, I need insurance. If I want to borrow from a bank, I need insurance. Well, if you're not underwriting risk for wildfires anymore in California, and you are either increasing the cost of premium or not underwriting risk for hurricanes and floods in certain parts of the US, people will just move to another state. But in my country, and in the other sovereign countries of the Caribbean, where are they going to move to? The reality is that we've seen where the benefits have been. But because some of these benefits have not sufficiently trickled down to the people who need it at the bottom, we have the rise of populism, and let us call it for what it is. The bias against migration is rooted in historic injustices and attitudes. So we need to be able to sell and to explain to people how they benefit. The truth is that a trade war between China and the US just puts the whole world at risk. And that's not in anyone's interest. And at the end of the day, it actually makes it worse for both countries because they still live within a global ecosystem. We have accepted that the scale of nervousness and anxiety means that we will no longer go only for efficient supply chains, but we will go for resilient supply chains. And it's probably going to take another 2 or 3 decades before we turn the corner again back to be able to work in that seamless manner that we do. That committing and walking the walk and not just talking the talk will mean. We come to Paris today with a heavy heart, but with hope. We come to Paris today not to reinforce the divisions of the past, the orders of the past, but we come to Paris to identify the common humanity that we share and the absolute moral imperative to save our planet and to make it livable. We don't need a lot more words today. And quite honestly, I don't know that I have it in me to give more words. As I speak to you, my country, that of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and others in the Caribbean, in the Eastern Caribbean, are under a tropical storm watch for Tropical Storm Beth, literally. Yesterday, I had to decide whether to stay or to go. And I chose to stay because it is important that we move to action. Behind Tropical Storm Beth is another system. And hence, this is our new reality. We have heard this morning from Vanessa. We've heard from the economists. We've heard from the president of Niger. And everyone has spoken truth with feeling, with clarity. And Emmanuel, I've left you for last because privately I call this the How Dare You Summit. How dare you? How dare you upset the order? How dare you step out of your crease and summon us all to this inflection moment that will determine whether we will have the capacity and the will to bring pace and scope to the problem. I can tell you that there has been movement. Yes, 9 months ago, no one was speaking about natural disaster clauses. Now we have people wanting to recognize the wisdom of it because countries do need to pause debt payments if they are going to house and feed people who are victims of a climate crisis. Doesn't quite work as well for those who have to move people who are suffering from drought, as the president of Malawi has had to do. So we need to perfect it. 9 months ago, no one was talking about multilateral development bank reform at scale. And Ajay, the World Bank was not as forceful in its commitment to the crisis of climate as it is now. And we wish you all the best because in your hands lies the need for pace and scope. 9 months ago, we were not prepared to discuss issues of debt. And Kristalina, when no one else was stepping up during the pandemic, yes, you led the way, recognizing that your duty was not only to deal with the symptoms of the balance of payments problems, but to go back to the treaty and its underlying objective of securing growth and macro and financial and economic stability. But what is required of us is not simply to mark a card for progress. As we heard from Vanessa, what is required of us now is absolute transformation and not reform of our institutions. And that transformation is required because while the world knew since the 1890s that we were facing the warming of the climate, we chose not to heed the advice of scientists. And that which could have been done in more than a century is now being reduced to be done in less than a decade. And Secretary General, my heart bleeds for you because yours has been almost that constant voice in the wilderness But I say to you that it has not been in vain. As you heard from President Macron this morning, there is now the beginning of the understanding that poverty and climate cannot be separated. That education and climate cannot be separated. And later today we will go into the details of what that action must look like, much of which we have put in the Bridgetown Initiative, not because we believe we have the answers alone, but simply because we had the will to pull people together and say, let us discuss these issues and let us make enough noise consistently to command the attention of those who must speak and who must act. I ask us today not to leave Paris without understanding that the bolstering of the political ambition that is required must secure transformation and not reform. And I ask us to ensure that those of us who are heads of government and heads of state recognize that the world cannot continue in the shadow of an old imperial order that does not see countries, does not feel countries, does not hear countries, and worse, does not see, feel, or hear people. I ask us today to recognize that we cannot come to Paris, but let our directors go back to the IMF or the World Bank and it be business as usual. They do not act in their own interests. They act on behalf of our sovereign states. And that is why we speak not only to the need for money, we speak to the need for the reform of the governance systems. Because when these institutions were founded, our countries did not exist. And we speak for a complete transformation of securing the sources of capital, as unpopular as it might be to voice it. We do not ask for the bankruptcy of private companies. That's not our wish. But we do ask for everybody to share the burden so that we can share the bounty. And it therefore means that simply relying and holding only governments accountable has run its course. And what is necessary now is for us to bring to the table also multinational corporations whose balance sheets dwarf more than 2/3 of the world's states. That is the world we have created out of the last century. And if we don't recognize that they cannot be left out of the equation, I'm coming. If they don't recognize that they cannot be left out of the equation, then we have no desire to solve the problem. And we thank philanthropy for what they do, but it can't only be what they like. It has to be what the world needs. And I hope that we leave Paris, therefore, not only secure in our determination to protect the planet, to protect the biodiversity, to protect people, but to recognize that if we do not act today at scale, with pace, we will not be able to get there in time to save more people. Let us, as the representatives of our people, at this most unique time in the history of civilization, not only do the right thing, but do it in time and do it for the right reasons.
Comrade
President Vladimir Putin,
Camarade Président Chef d'État africain,
African heads of state,
Camarade Chef de délégation,
Comrade Head of Delegation,
Bonjour.
good morning. It is an honor for me this morning to take the floor here and to pass on to you the fraternal greetings of the people of the land of men of integrity. It is from the Almighty that we have been able to gather here this morning in good health to talk about the future and the well-being of our people. I am going to apologize to the elders whom I may offend in my future remarks. Because of Africanity, because of the rights of one of them, I have to apologize. Comrade, I have a few questions from my generation. Not a single question that is being asked. We don't have an answer, and it turns out that here we can wash our linseed because we feel like a family. It feels like a family in the sense that Russia is also a family for Africa. It is a family because we have the same history. Russia made enormous sacrifices to liberate the world from Nazism during the Second World War. The people of Africa, our grandfathers, were also forcibly deported to help Europe get rid of Nazism. We share the same history in the sense that we are the forgotten peoples of the world, whether in the history books, in documentaries or in film, insofar as we sweep away the preponderant role played by Russia and Africa in this fight against Nazism. We are here together because we are here to talk about the future of our peoples and what is to come. Of the future of tomorrow, of the free world to which we aspire, of a world without interference in our internal affairs. We have the same prospects, and I hope that this summit will be an opportunity to forge very good relations and to create a better future for our peoples. The questions that my generations are asking themselves about the next generation, if I can sum it up, is that they do not understand how Africa, with so much wealth on our soil, with its generous nature, water and abundant sunshine, Africa is today the poorest continent. Africa is a starving continent, and how is it that our heads of state are traveling through the world of a man? These are questions that we are asking ourselves and that we have not yet had answers. We have the opportunity to forge new relationships, and I hope that these relations can be the best, to give a better future to our peoples. My generation also instructs me to say that because of poverty, they are forced to cross the ocean in order to try to reach Europe. They die in the ocean. But that soon they will not have crossed it, because they will come in front of our palaces to look for their daily sustenance. As far as Burkina Faso is concerned, for more than 8 years, we have been confronted with the most barbaric and violent form of neo-colonialism and imperialism. Slavery still has so much to impose on us. Our front runners have taught us one thing: slavery that is not capable of accepting its own revolt does not deserve to be relied upon by its fate. We don't worry about our fate. We are not asking for someone to rely on our fate. The people of Burkina Faso have decided to fight against hypothyrism capable of reviving its development. In this struggle, valiant peoples, wines and a population have pledged to take up arms in the face of terrorists. The ones we actually called the VDPs, volunteers. We are surprised to see the imperialists calling these VDPs militias and of all kinds. It is one of those wines, because in Europe, when people take up arms to defend their patriots, they are called patriots. Our grandfathers were deported to save Europe. It was not with their consent, against their grey. Well, on the way back, we remember that in Traore, when they tried to bandage their elemental sheet, they were massacred, so it doesn't matter. When we people decide to defend ourselves, we are called militias. But that's not the problem. What is the problem is to see African heads of state who bring nothing to these peoples who are fighting, but who sing the same thing as the imperialists. To our militia dealers, to our traders, therefore, to men who do not respect human rights, hence the human right. We are effusive against this and these shameful people. We, the African heads of state, must stop behaving like puppets who dance every time the imperialists pull the strings. Yesterday, President Vladimir Putin announced that the grain would be sent to Africa. And we are very happy, and we thank each other for that. But it is also a message to our African heads of state because at the next forum, we must not come here without having ensured that our peoples will be able to achieve food self-sufficiency for those who do not know war. We need to learn from those who have already been able to achieve this in Africa, build good relations here and build better relations with the Russian Federation so that we can meet the needs of our people. I may not be slow, time is running out and very short. We are obliged to stop and love my take. But I would like to end by saying that we must therefore pay tribute to our peoples who are fighting. Glory to our peoples, dignity to our peoples, victory to our peoples, homeland or death will come.
Please allow me also to pay tribute to the Nigerian people. These people who have suffered so much since the advent of the CNSP and who continue to remain standing. Thank you to the Nigerians who gave us a warm welcome yesterday when we set foot on the soil of our homeland here. You are more than friends, you are more than neighbors, you are our brothers, you are our sisters. Because fraternity goes beyond friendship or neighborhood. We have the same blood flowing through our veins. In our veins runs the blood of these valiant warriors who fought and who reserved these lands that we call Mali, Burkina, and Niger. In our veins runs the blood of these valiant warriors who helped the whole world get rid of Nazism and many other scourges. In our veins runs the blood of these valiant warriors who were deported from Africa to Europe, America, Asia, or whatever, and who helped build these states during slavery. In our veins flows the blood of worthy men, of robust men, of capable men. And for this, let us be proud and thank you for being a national of the AES. Africa, this continent which has suffered so much and which continues to suffer because of the imperialists. These imperialists have only one cliché in mind: Africa is the empire of slaves. This is how they see Africa. For them, Africans belong to them. Our land belongs to them. Our basements belong to them. They have never been able to change software until today. It's deplorable. But how does he do it? It is unfortunately since the 1960s that these 6,000 acres of independence were given to Africa. They just placed local valleys at the head, according to them, of their sub-prefecture to be able to continue to supply them. These local valleys that we are going to describe today as living room slaves have no other guide than to seek to live like the master, to satisfy the master, and to do everything that the master dictates. They steal, they plunder our states, take everything to the master, and their wealth is kept with the master. They do everything to live like their master and always satisfy him. When the master commands, they execute. Do you know who these parlor slaves are? We will explain to you what it is. These are individuals who have no dignity, who have no morals, who have no personality. But the slave master always knew how to identify these individuals. They are always ready to betray their brother to satisfy the master. They have betrayed us since independence, and others continue to betray us until today for the benefit of their master. These individuals always continue against all odds to plunder Africa, to help the master to plunder Africa. They like to say it every year. In their economic survey, Burkina is the poorest country, Mali is the poorest country, Niger is the poorest country. We are ranked among the last. All right, if we are as poor as they say, but when the time came to take responsibility, we asked these masters to leave the place. Why don't they want to leave? Because we take the case of Niger. For more than 40 years, certain countries have exploited uranium to produce energy at home. From Ottawa to Paris, the streets are illuminated. It's light. But in Niger, it's darkness. Security that served us. When you go to our states, our soils are drilled all over to search for precious metals such as gold. But often, there is not even the slightest accessible road to reach areas where they exploit some basic social services.
This battle, this war, we are going to win it, and we are going to overcome imperialism, which activated these terrorism in our region, to hope to bring us back in these colonial times, to maintain us under their yoke. to exploit us until the end of time. Africa is waking up, and no one can still close the eyes of Africans on our realities. No one can still come to divide us, to impose on us what they want. That's why we have done everything to be here today to speak to you, but also to come and wish good luck to President John Mahama. We will work together to strengthen cooperation between Burkina Faso and Ghana, and also between the AES and Ghana, because we have many challenges together and we have always been able to overcome them. There is no reason why we are not united and that we block imperialism. Stay united, and show your Burkina Faso wherever you are. Thank you very much.
So guys, I hope you have watched and listened to that powerful message, and it was a warning to the United States from the Prime Minister of Barbados, Motley. I really love Motley because she's that one of a fearless leader in the Caribbean. She always coming out and fighting the rights of the black people, the black Americans, the black people in the Caribbean, and also she always fight the rights of the African people. Motley, she has come out and sent a warning message to the United States, telling the United States to leave black Americans alone, and also to leave our African countries alone. And also in some of the video, he has talked about paying the black people their reparation. We have been seeing how the black people, they are being treated in the United States. Despite the black people build the America, these people, they are being given less opportunity. These people they are being there's a racism towards the black people. These people they are not being heard. Their voices, it is not being heard. So the Prime Minister of Barbados, Motley, she's calling the American people, the white people, to stop treating bad the black people, and also they need to pay them for the damages and for what they did to them, because also some of our African countries, they are still asking for the black reparation. So the black, the white people, the Americans, and all these colonizers countries, they need to pay black reparation, especially what they did to the African people, to some of the African country. We are still having some of the families here in Africa. They are still having the scars, they are still having the memories of what happened during slavery, and the white people, the colonizers, they have denied, they don't want to pay for the damage they did. So Motley, she's asking all these colonizers country, the Western countries, to pay black reparation, and also to stop treating the black people in their country very bad, because it is now time for the black people, and revolution, it has started. And also Motley, she's coming out and sending a warning message to the United States, telling them why is it they really love to interfere with some of the black countries, because Motley, she was doing an interview with a certain journalist, a United States journalist, and this journalist, she always talk about there's too much corruption in the Barbados. They thinks it is not working in the Barbados, but Motley, she's coming out and reply and tell her why is it everything anything bad which it is going on in the Caribbean country, you guys, you really love to talk about, but you don't want to talk about the good thing which it is happening in the Caribbean. Why is it you always want to associate some of the Caribbean country to like a corrupt country, to a country whereby whereby you always say about bad things in this Caribbean country, and yet your own country, this is Motley telling this journalism to their own country in the United States, these people, they don't want to report about the bad thing which it is happening. So these Western countries, they only want to report the bad thing which it is happening in Africa, and in their country they don't want to report about the bad thing which it is happening. So in their country, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of gunfight, people are dying each and every day, there's a mass shooting, but these people, they don't show this to the mass media. No, they always don't want to show this. What they are showing, it is how their country is good, but we know their country is bad. People, they are homeless, people, they are dying hunger. So these are the things that these people, they need to fix their country before coming out and talking about bad things about our Africa or any black country. So when it comes to the Africa, these people, they usually portrayed a bad image of Africa, showing the people that Africa, it is bad, there is less opportunity. But these people, they cannot show the development of Africa. These people, they can't show you how Africa, it is beautiful. They only focus on the bad side of Africa. So this is tell you that these people, they don't want to give us our respect. They don't want to appreciate us black people, and that's why these people, they have gone ahead and treat the black people bad, so that they cannot so that these black people, they can feel they are alone in the United States. And also, guys, you have heard a message from Ibrahim Traore. I really love Ibrahim Traore because he has become our African president. And Ibrahim Traore, he is a young African leader. So you can imagine, at the age of the 35 years, Ibrahim Traore is giving a very powerful speech. He's sending a message to all black people in the diaspora, the black Americans, the black people in the Caribbean, all black people who they are out of Africa. Ibrahim Traore has come out and sent a message to them, telling them that it is now the right time for them to come back home. We are uniting. We want also to develop our country. We want to come together so that these people also can start respecting us. You know, the biggest fear that these people, the colonizers or the white people, they are having towards us black people, it is to see us black people being down and them being on top. So they don't want to see black people coming up. So Ibrahim Traore is calling all black people to wake up and to come together so that we can also defeat these other people, and also we can make them to pay for the damage and for the things that they did to us during colonization. So kindly, guys, thank you so much. Subscribe if you haven't, like this video, share, and also comment. See you on my next one. Bye bye.